Joining us now is Rebecca Walser, president of Walser Wealth Management, joining us here on the day. Rebecca, thanks for making it through all of that with us. Stocks rebounding from last week's sell-off. Is this a reaction to anything specific, or this simply a bounce after last week's woes?
Yeah, I think that maybe investors realized that we were a little bit over-aggressive on the sell-off last week. Maybe hopefully some investors are trying to just take some profits. And, we have a big day tomorrow. I don't know if that could have any bearing on what happened last week and certainly today. But I do think that I can't wait for tomorrow to be over. I know we probably won't know by tomorrow, but I do think investors like certainty, Brad. And obviously when you're not, sure which way it's going to go, it does cause the market to be uncertain. So let's hope we get some clear resolution as fast as possible.
Okay. And so with that in mind, I think back to perhaps the year 2000, as many people might, with Bush and Al Gore perhaps being the most recent reference where if there is more of uncertainty that persists in the days and even weeks after the election, how would the markets react?
If we go back to Bush v. Gore in 2000, Brad, that was like the beginning of the internet, right? I mean, we had our unicorns back then that hadn't even sold, a bag of dog food like Pets.com worth $1 billion. So it's hard to make, correlations because we're so tech central now in the whole world. But I can just tell you in general, and investors don't like uncertainty. So I think that I think everybody is expecting, and I include the market in this, that we will not know a clear definitive answer tomorrow night, and probably for maybe a week. But I will tell you that once it's clear we're not getting a certain direction one way or the other, and it's going to be an extended period of time, the market's not going to like that, Brad, because one thing that I've been looking forward to is the depolitization of the virus, and specifically, what are people really going to do once the election is over, and they can start really making some decisions on, are we going to reopen the school, are we going to reopen our business, or has this just been politicized to death? And I can't wait for that to happen. So any stretching out is not what the market wants, and certainly not what we want.
Some of the things that we've heard, at least in the talks around stimulus, is that some of that money would go to testing, towards reopening the economy, and a healthy population translates to a healthy economy. To the best we've been able to see, when will, and how are you pricing in particularly when a next round of stimulus could come? And I know that comes back down, everything seemingly comes back down to the election right now, but also this overlap between the election, the political sphere, and then the medical sphere as well, and how we are still responding to an ongoing health crisis.
Exactly, Brad, you're 100% right. And I will just parlay on what you just said and say that, I think if we think that the election's going Donald Trump's way, that then the Democratic Party, I think it's going to have to not want to win that battle as strongly as they have before. If they thought a Biden presidency was going to win, they didn't have to make a lot of concessions. And I do think that they thought that not signing a stimulus would hurt Trump. So let's say that the re-election of Donald Trump occurs, then I do think the Democrats are going to have to say, we're not going to die on this hill. We just lost, and we have to get some kind of stimulus done, especially for the airlines before the end of the year. This talk of it not happening again until February is totally ridiculous and will not work for our country unless there's a vaccine or magically reopen, which we know that's not coming tomorrow. So we definitely need stimulus before the end of the year, whether it is a Donald Trump presidency that is a lame duck that is saying, I'm going to do this for the good of the country. I can see a Donald Trump doing that, his administration doing that. The Democrats are going to want to do it because their candidate will be installed in January, and we don't want the economy to be bludgeoned before their candidate can actually assume office. So they will be much more motivated to pass stimulus. And I think if Trump is elected, he will also be motivated because he doesn't want to have to deal with an economy that's bleeding to death either. So I think both groups are going to be more motivated post-election to go ahead and sign and get that stimulus going. Once the election's over, there's no further reason to just make it politicized. So let's pray that that's true, Brad. Everything gets politicized. But we definitely need more stimulus before next year. That's a deal breaker. It has to happen in 2020. It must.
I think you mentioned something very key in the airline industry and what we've particularly been watching and how they can continue even at this time to try and increase demand or demand generation perhaps is the best way to look at it, because that's exactly what they're having to do. They're having to go out to customers with some type of marketing strategy to say, either A, we're going to incorporate testing within the lines, the routes that we operate in. We're going to work with different airport operators as well to make that happen. Or we are going to look towards where we can cut costs for the consumers. Now, in cutting costs, that also impacts the type of revenue that they're able to bring in. And they've already seen decreased flight costs because they've got to be still appealing to the type of demand that is out there at a fractional level compared to last year. And so with all of these things in mind, what is your best case scenario for airlines once we do get into 2021 and through the political season?
Yeah. Well, Brad, it's a rocky road, unfortunately, for the airlines, because what has happened now is if you had something that was a shutdown, like we originally thought, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, if we had gone through that and we had opened within 30 days or 60 days even, and it was a very temporary thing, then people would not reorder and readjust their lives. And that's their work lives, their professional lives, their personal lives. What you've seen with such a shutdown extended for so long is that businesses have completely reevaluated the working location where they have to work in the office. And they've certainly immediately reevaluated business conferences, business travel, and that affects the airlines directly. And so while we can say as a country we've done the best we could to be and continue to be productive while working remotely through all of the, our tech stocks this year that have performed so well and through the virus, at the same time, there are other industries like travel, like airlines, like luxury, that if we don't return to some level of pre-coronavirus working, habits, that they're going to be decimated forever. We don't have enough we don't have enough leisure travelers to sustain the airlines at the level that they have grown to become. Business travel is a huge part of it. And so, Brad, if we do not get the country to, one, either have a vaccine, or two, accept the fact that 90 plus something percent of people survive this virus even if they get it, and therefore it's the people with comorbidities and the people of a late age in life, unless we get one of those two things, that mainstream think it's okay to go back to living their life and we'll fly again, or we get a vaccine that allow people to feel like they're safe again, one or the other. But what cannot happen is we're status quo, staying as we are, not traveling, and thinking that the airlines are going to be okay. They will not be okay. It will be a disaster, and the airline industry will be unrecognizable to what it is today.
Just lastly, while we have you, Rebecca, let's talk housing. As of course, we've been continuing to watch not only the home sales, or whether they be existing or new home sales, but particularly on the real estate side of the equation that accounts for renting. As renters have been able to get some type of assurances through the first few months of the pandemic, a lot of those assurances, because of the CARES Act dwindling and then expiring, a lot of those assurances, whether they be rent moratoriums or the inability to have some of their rentees be evicted, that was something that they could count on, both renters and landlords as well. And so with all of that in mind, how are you going to be keeping an eye on the rental side of the housing economy?
Well, it is another thing that the stimulus is wearing out, and the original, CARES Act stimulus is wearing out. We're waiting for the HEROES Act. And just the same as the airlines, Brad, we can't indefinitely suspend foreclosure or eviction in this case with renters, and the court system can't, indefinitely suspend that. So we do have to get people back to work. And this is what I've been saying all along. Stimulus only goes so far and only can do so much. You can only say you can't evict people for so long. Renters can only say, well, we can't hold out on unemployment. But now it's at some point, people have to decide that the temporary situation has passed, and now we have to get to more of a sustainable way of life. And, suspending evictions is not part of that equation. You can't have free housing for people indefinitely, and I'm sure that they don't want that either. They want to get back to working. So again, it comes back to getting back to some level of normalcy post-coronavirus, whether it's through a vaccine or through educating Americans and not scaring them to death with case counts, that, hey, even if cases are going up, the hospitals are only at 6% utilization in this area. In other words, only 6% of people in the hospitals are coronavirus patients. And we have like something like over, 70% of the beds still available. We have to educate. We can't just say cases, and then people don't want to go out and get a different job or work. And so they're still relying on their abatement on the eviction. So we have to all get back to normal as fast as possible. And tomorrow is going to be a huge turning page to get us back on track. And we'll really see how we're going to effectively deal with this virus once the politicization is over, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly an education at a national level, but certainly state by state, locality by municipality, as there are different types of responses and different counts. And so just being fully transparent about that. Rebecca Walser, who is the president of Walser Wealth Management, joining us here on The Day. Thanks for the time, as always.